This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everyone. I welcome you all to the webinar.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. So I guess everybody must have installed the softwares that I asked yesterday. So everybody have Anaconda Navigator in the system. Please type yes. If somebody doesn't have it, please type. Okay, great. So first of all, try to open your Anaconda Navigator. Yes, you might have got the recordings. You can just type out in the search bar as Anaconda Navigator. It will open up. Or if somebody want to use the Anaconda command prompt, they can also use it. They can just go there and just type their Jupyter notebook. It will also shoot up Anaconda. Jupyter notebook, and you can press enter. It will open it for you. Because when you open it through the Anaconda Navigator, good morning, Pankaj. So if you open it through the Anaconda Navigator, it takes some time. But with the command prompt, it will not take much time. Okay, so go to your ML project. The session that we have, where we have created all the files. You all have created this folder, right? ML projects. So there you must have these files. So we will be working on this file again, intro to Python. And this is the file that we will be working on today. So we will understand functions. We'll try to look at the functions basically. So what does a function means? Why do we even need functions in Python? Let's try to look at this thing first of all. Okay, let's suppose that you have a robot and you purchase yourself a robot, and what you want to do, you want to program that robot. The robot is that, it doesn't have machine learning capabilities. So if you want this robot to get milk for you, then you won't be able to do that automatically. You might have to program it. So you might have to feed these instructions to the robot. Take milk, open door, close door, walk forward, turn right, walk toward 100 meter, turn left, go inside the shop. All sort of instructions you have to feed to the robot. And for the next day, if you want that robot to collect milk again, then you again have to write down these instructions again, and so on and so forth. In the coming days also, you might have to write these instructions again and again. So we don't want that. We want to, reduce the coding or reduce the typing that we have to do again and again. If we want the robot to do something, we will create a function with the help of which it will be able to do that task. We just have to feed in the instructions. Okay, so what we will do, we will create a function which will be get milk. So how this function is going to work, first of all, we'll say take money, open door, close door, walk forward, turn right, walk forward 100, turn left, go to the shop. So that's how this function is going to work. So every day we are just going to run this function, and the robot is able to collect milk for us. So let's see how can we create this function in Python. Let's look at the code. So basically, when we try to define a function, it has three parts basically. How does the function gets created? First of all, it has a header or the definition of a function. We have to define that function. We have to use the def keyword, and then we have to pass in some name of that function that we want to give it. Let's say we're giving the name it to be like get milk, get underscore milk, and we have to pass in these round brackets. We have to pass them, and then we have to use these. So so this is going to be the header, and then this is going to be the body in which we will pass in the instructions that how that function is going to work. And then once we have created the function, the second part is calling that function. And once we call that function, all these instructions will get executed. Every time when we call this function, these instructions will get executed. Okay, so enough of theory. Let's get back to the Jupyter. Let's see how how we are going to actually create the function. Okay, so you can start typing it out. Let's say we are creating the function it to be okay. So let's say we are creating the function and giving it a name as get milk. And then when we will press enter, it will do the indenting. It will do the indentation on its own. So in Python, this is how it works in Python. It does the indentation for us automatically. So now we have to just pass in the instruction. Let's say we want the simple instruction will pass. We'll say open the door, or yeah, open the door. Then what we'll say is we'll say walk to the store. So see, it's doing the indentation on its own. If somebody is not familiar with the Python, so it does the indentation on its own. When you will just press the enter key, it will do the indentation for you. Okay, then we'll say buy milk on the ground floor. Then we'll say return with milk. Or let's say return with milk to home, something like that. We can create function in this way. So now once we press enter, are we going to get any output? Everybody, this is a question to you. When I press enter, when I run this command, when I do the shift plus enter, when I create this function, am I going to get any output? No output. Okay, great. Great. So everybody is familiar with function, I guess. Great, great, great. So now when, yeah, okay, cool. So when I'm going to call this function, let's say it to be get milk, and now when I will press enter, am I going to get any output? Now the calling of function is happening, right? We are going to call the function. Exactly. So this is the output that we can expect the function to give us. Now, have we seen any function before? Let's try to see. Have we used the functions before, the work that we did day before yesterday? Let's try to look at. So this was also a function, right? Dot describe. This was a function. This was also a function, isn't it? These are all functions. This is also functions. This is also function, but we don't call them functions. We'll talk about that later on, that why we don't call them functions. And also, if I say, then if I come back here, this is also a function, print. It has open and close parentheses. It is also a function, right? So in Python, we have different sort of functions. Inbuilt function, correct, correct. And this is a user defined function that we have just defined. This is the function that we have defined. We can make it global as well. We can make this function global, and so that if anybody wants to use this function, they can also use it. So that was the first type of a function that we have. Now let's look at another thing. Let's look at another type. Now, when we talk about function, we talk about parameters and arguments. So what are parameters and arguments? Let's try to understand that now. You might be thinking that what are these new terminologies, why we are coming, if somebody is new to Python, you'll say why we are using different vocabularies. We have used different words, parameters, function, modules, imports, different so don't worry, these are the basics of any language. When you start using any language, then you need to be familiar with the basic vocabulary. So that is what I'm trying to make you guys aware of. Okay, so let's see what exactly a parameter is. So, defining and creating a function. When we are defining a function get milk, and we want to pass in a variable, we want to pass in some value. So that value is going to be our parameter, right? So money, in this case, we want to get some amount of some liters of milk, and that is going to be dependent on the amount of money that we will be paying, or we will be inserting in the function. And then the calling of a function happens, then the value that we pass in, that is going to be the argument. Are you able to follow me? Okay, let's see now. Let's look at the code for it. Let's say we want to create a function which will take some sort of argument. Okay, let's say that this was a function get milk. Let's say I'm creating another function which is called fill the fridge. Now we want to fill the fridge with milk. Now we want to pass in the argument, which is the amount. Sorry, it's the parameter that we are passing. Now we want it to behave the same way. We'll say open the door. Then we'll say walk to the store. Then we might say buy, and then we'll pass in the parameter up here. We want to mention the amount here, that what amount he need to purchase. Cartoons on the ground floor. Then we'll say return with the milk galore. Now when I create this function and when I try calling this function, Oh, give me a second. Fill the fridge. So now, if we will pass in some amount, let's say we are passing out to be 5. My bad, guys. Now it is saying that it should only be, can only concatenate string, not integer. So now if somebody is going to say 5, and it's not going to take that value. If I will say in this particular function, if I will say 5, then it will work, right? It will work. But let's say let's do some more changes up here. Not this way, this way. Then if we want to pass in a numeric value, how can we do that? Right, that's great. So we can do it this way. str. Now if I go back and if I pass, let's say 5, let's see if it works now or not. It does works. I'll have to do something here also. Yeah, up here also. Now it's working fine. Now if I go back and if I write 5 string, it will accept that value also. You might not be running the function correctly. This is the function. First of all, run this command. It says that fill fridges. That means that you haven't defined the function first of all. You need to define the function. Dr. Suresh, you need to define the function fill the fridge first of all. The way I did it, first of all, I defined this function. I run this cell first. If I go back, if I comment this out, if I run it, now if I'm going to run this code, oh, it might be defined somewhere else. Hang on. Okay, let's see. Let's do one more thing. Let's see interrupt. Okay. Let's do one thing. Okay, now when I'm going to run this, I'm going to get an error because I haven't defined this function. I haven't run this cell. So I need to run this cell first of all. Are you guys able to follow me? Dr. Suresh, are you able to follow me? Now, if I'm going to go back and if I will run this cell now, and then I will run this command, then I will try to call this function, then it will work up and fine. Yes, I have defined. Please repeat. Okay. So see, I'll restart the kernel again. Why it is not accepting integer as a parameter? Because we haven't defined that it to be integer. We need to define, we need to tell the program that whether it is going to be an integer, whether it is going to be a string. Otherwise, what happens is that automatically or by default, it is going to accept that value to be string. Yeah, that's what we call a, Python is a dynamic typing. It has dynamic typing. It doesn't define, what kind of input we want to take in. You have to tell the program that this is the input you can expect. Otherwise, somebody can mess around with your program if you're not explicit about it. And that is why, that is the importance of Python. It gives you this ability that you can tweak around with the inputs. So anyways, coming back to the topic, so I have interrupted the kernel again. Now sir, if I try to run it, I am obviously going to get an error because Python is not familiar with this function. This function is not defined till now. Yes, you can pass in the amount as integer also. We can define it that way. If I run it and if I go back and if I say 5, it'll work. Yes. As we have said, whatever the values, somebody can say like 5, I want 5 packets of milk, 5 cartoons of milk, or he can say number 5. So we want that to be converted to string only. So you mean while defining the function, we need to explicitly tell the program that the data type of a variable in every case. Well, it depends, if you want that value to be an integer, you have to tell it to the program that it should be integer. Let's say I want to accept a value from it. Let's say I'm creating a variable which is called input, right? So if I want to take some values from you, then I need to I need to tell the program that whether it is going to be a string, otherwise it is going to take it as a string only. It is going to take it as a string. There is a function that we have in Python. Let's say I'm typing it in. Not in cannot be used. Let's say we are typing it as okay. Then we'll say input. Enter the number. So we need to tell this thing to Python also that this is the value that we are going to get. It's going to be a string, whether it is going to be a string or whether it is going to be a number. Oh, I'm sorry. Input invalid. String amount, it will convert our value to string. Yes, sir. String, yeah, when we do that, when we say str and amount, it will convert that to be string. Let's leave it. Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah. It's going to be end input. Then we're gonna say enter the input. Again, we are facing the same problem. Let's say it to be enter. Let's call it to be enter. Let's try to run it. No, it's not working. Yeah, there was some problem with the kernel only. So now, yeah, there was a problem with the kernel. Yes, 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 I get it. I restarted the kernel, it started working. So now when I will say it to be, when I will say it to be like, let's say I'll say 5. So I might get an error because I'm explicitly telling my program explicitly that it needs to be an integer. Now let's say I go back and I try to run it again. Now if I'll type 5, it will accept that value. Now if I go back and if I tell the program that it needs to be a string, then when I run it, and when I tell the program that yes, it is a string, then it will run the value. So I guess this is clear to everybody. Please type yes or no if you are able to follow. Okay. Okay, now that we've understand what is the parameter and what is the argument. Yes, by default it is string. Yes, exactly. That's what I was saying. Yeah. Let's if I remove the string also, it will still work. Okay, you were writing semicolon in place of colon at the end of the def. Okay. Yeah, you need to make sure that is a big blunder. You can't make that blunder. Okay. Now we have understood about the function and we have understood about the parameters and the arguments. Now we want the
Sir,
result. We want that function. Hello.
hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, like in other languages like C++ or C,
Mm-hmm.
while defining a function and
Mm-hmm.
telling it about the parameters, we can tell it na कि ये वाला int होना चाहिए, ये वाला float होना चाहिए and all.
Right.
So
But what?
is there no way
But
to do that in Python?
what exactly the question? Can you repeat that again, please?
So can I speak in Hindi?
Sure, sure. Please go ahead.
जैसे C++ या C में हम
हाँ जी.
बता देते हैं उसको कि लाइक while defining a function itself कि
Uh-huh.
अंदर brackets में int a int b these are the parameters that we want while calling the function, and then
Right.
while calling it we have to pass integer or whatever values were asked at that time. तो
Right.
यहाँ
Right.
पे
Right.
तो it is like कि ऑटोमेटिकली वो स्ट्रिंग ही लेगा आपसे जब भी लेगा, मतलब हमें
Yes.
ही
Then.
उसको एक्सप्लिसिटली कन्वर्ट करना पड़ेगा.
Yes. 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 That is the advantage. You know that you don't have to type it again and again. If you want the input to be string
So
every time, you don't.
but then we are having to add an extra line or extra amount of code ना कि उसको
Yes.
कन्वर्ट करो अब वापस से स्ट्रिंग से या
Yes.
जिसमें भी करना
Exactly.
है वापस से
Yes.
कन्वर्ट.
Yes. Yes. If you want your input, अगर आपको आपकी input जो है वो integer चाहिए या कोई number चाहिए, then you have to tell the program that it needs to be an integer. That is what we call dynamic typing in Python. Because in Python, we don't
Okay.
care about the, what kind of type of the function we are going to get. You can say it's an advantage, it's a disadvantage as well. We only care about the
Yeah.
function that we are creating. or the parameter that we are
Yeah,
creating.
I think I've got used to C++ or something, and that's why I'm finding it
Yes,
odd
yes.
over here.
Yes. It's odd for somebody who's coming from C++ or somebody is coming from Java background. So you might find it odd.
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
Okay.
chalo, you can go ahead.
Okay. 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 Now that we've understand what is parameters, what is arguments, now let's move back to the next topic. Now we want the function to return us something or return us the result, because this was just following some commands. It was not returning us some values. We want that function to return us something. So how can we do that? So in Python, what we have to do, first up, we are doing the same thing again. We are defining the function. We are passing in some parameters, that's the money, and then when defining it, how we want the output to be. Now, if you want to display that output, we have to use the return statement. If you want to if you want to showcase that to someone, or if you want that to be out your showcase as to be your output, then you have to use the return statement. Then while you'll be calling this function, you will get that as an output. Let's look into the code now, but how does that works. Now let's say, yeah, this was explained here again. Now we could also do this thing also. We could pass in two parameters also. This was I forgot to explain you these. We can also pass in two parameters if we want to. We can tweak around with that. I'll come back to this again, again. So let's look into the return statement first of all. Let's look into the return statement. So now we want to define a function. Not this function. Maybe what we want to do is it's easy now. Everybody is familiar with this. Can we move back to? Can I give you a question on based on this, or you want me to show you some example for this? Okay, let me show you example. Let's say we want to define a function which is called as sum. So we want to add two numbers. Not sum we cannot use. Let's say we want to create a function which is called add. So it will take two arguments. Let's say it to be a and b. And then what we are going to do, we are storing the value of a plus b into the variable which is c, and we want our output to be shown as c. Right now what I want to do now, when I will call this function add, and when I will pass in two values, let's say I want to add 3 plus 5. When I will press enter, I will get the output. So this value is stored in C, but we are not actually able to see it. So this is what happens when we are running the show, or when we are running this command, these different commands. They are making some changes in the program. They are returning us some values. They're returning us some changes. Okay. So this is what the return statement does. Okay, now I have a question for you. I guess everybody will be able to solve it. It's very easy. Okay, now let's imagine that you are working for a Silicon Valley client, and you are working on some on-site project for the client, and you are working for a company which build calculators, or which write programs for the calculators. So what happens is that your boss came and he asked you to create a program which is called times. Now this function that you want to create, it should takes in two arguments. This is the functionality that of a calculator that we are trying to create. Now he tells you that this function that you are creating, it should takes two arguments, and what it should do, I guess everybody is already aware what it should do, but let me put it again. So it needs to multiply the numbers or the the two inputs that we are going to pass. Let's say if we pass 5 and 6, it should multiply 5 and 6 and output the result of the multiplication. So what you have to do, you have to test the function and create a variable test and set the test equal to the output of the function. Now let's say what I want you to test your function on. Let's say your inputs are 3.14 and 5.09. So what should be the output? So you can go ahead and try to solve this question. And if anybody is not able to do it, don't worry, I'll tell it how we can do that. But I'll give you 2 minutes to solve it. I've got lots of answers. Let's try to see. Somebody gave me this one. Okay, let's try to run it. Oh, we are getting the error. Oh, again I'm getting the error. Why? I've done the work easy for you. Now let's try to call this function. It's not working. Name h is not defined. Okay, you've somebody have taken the input as a and b and then you are multiplying it with h. So that's not going to give you results. Yeah, that's it. So I said that it should be, we need to give it the name as test. Okay. A and B. Okay. You don't need to use print then Prabjot. You will get the output. You don't have to use the print statement then. If you have defined the function and if you are using the return statement, then there is no need to use the print. Test is equal to times. Viditi, this is what I asked for. To create a function, multiply the value, store it in a variable and return that variable. Then call that function and get the output. This is what I asked for, I guess. Or yeah, you can also do the same thing. But yeah, I guess everybody is able to follow indent problem. See, what happens is that when you get the indent problem, this is for Neetu Goel. Let me share the code with you. This is how you should write it. नहीं आ रहा बिना टेस्ट लिखे output. Okay, that means there is some problem if you're not getting the output without that. But see, I'm not doing it. I'm not storing the value. I can also do that. I mean, let's tweak with this. Let's say I'm storing the value as to be result, and I'm displaying it to be as a result. Now when I call it and times, I can just store this value as test. Okay, yeah, yes, I get it, I get it. So what happens is that, yeah, now I get it. So what happens is that when you store this value to a variable, so let me address this question. I just forgot to talk about this. What happens is that when you store a value or when you store the output of a function in some variable, you will not be getting the output because that value has been stored somewhere. So what I'm trying to tell you through this is through this example, and thank you Vidushi, you pointed this out. So the thing is that when we are creating a function and that function is returning us some value, so when we are going to run that function, that value, the output of that function is not going to be stored somewhere. It is just going to be a garbage value. It is going to return that value and it is going to just vanish. Now let's say if we want to store that value into a variable, then in this case, the way Vidushi has done it, the way, and if you want to check that value, then you might have to write it as test and then you have to run it. So you don't need to use print also, you can just type test and it will show you the results. Yes, you need to type in that value. That values now has been stored in this variable, which is test. Now you need to call this variable. You can just type test and plus shift plus enter, or you can also do print test. That's not required, but if you want, you can. If you want to check the value. So if somebody is not able to follow that, let me address it. This can be done in two ways also. What we can do is we can create a function times which is taking two values as a and b, and then either we can store the multiplication into a variable or either we can directly return that value the way I did it. So now when I'm going to call that function, I will be storing the output into a variable which is called test. Now it is not going to give me any result because that value now has been stored somewhere. Now, but if I want to check what is the output, then I might have to print it. Either I can do print or either I simply can write test, the name of that variable. It will show me the output. So I guess everybody is able to follow me. If anybody is not, please type no. I'm not able to see the output of this code. So you're not, Mr. Pant, you're not getting the output when you are printing the tie. What is the function? Can you show me your function? Can you show me your times function? Okay. Okay, now I get it. I see. So basically this is an indentation error. The return is out of the loop. It's not in the loop. So it should not run first of all. When you will try to run it, it will not run. You haven't used the commas again. Two columns are missing. Thank you so much, Neetu ma'am, for pointing it out. So now when I will try to store it, where is that value? Yeah. When I try to store it somewhere, It'll work. Yes, it's working. You can see that. Okay. Okay, now I was talking about we want to create a function which should take two inputs. Can somebody do that? I want to create a function which will be taking in the amount and also the destination. I want to tell my robot to get this particular amount and go to this particular destination. Now I don't want to collect milk. Maybe I want to collect something else. Or let's stick to the milk, but maybe I want to I want my program to go to different location destinations. So can somebody create this function for me, which will have a destination and a amount, two parameters, input parameters. We have two input parameters here. Can we do that? Okay, I'll give you 2 minutes. Somebody's not able to do it, that's okay. I'll help you with the code. So I guess nobody's able to do it. Okay, let me tell you how can we do that. Let's say we want to create a function. We will create a new function which will be with the name of, we'll give it a name as milk mission, and we will take two inputs. First is going to be the amount, second is going to be the destination. Now how we want to do this, first of all we'll ask it to open the door. Open door. Then what we'll do, we'll ask it to walk to the destination. Walk to the destination. Then what we will do, we'll ask it to buy the amount. Spell mistake. Yes. Then what we can say, cartoons on the ground floor. Ground floor. Then we'll say return with the milk gallon. Yes, I'm very bad in typing, ma'am. So sorry for that. Is it okay now? Okay, let's run this and let's see what can we do with this function now. Now when we will be calling this function, we have to mention two arguments. Let's say I mention it to be, I want 5, the amount is 5, and I want my robot to go to a store 1. I want that to go to a store 1. Let's see what happens. Milk mission is not defined. It's not. Okay, I'm sorry. My bad again. Okay, so what happens is that it will open the door and walk to the store 1. Now in destination, it has store 1, and it will buy the amount of the amount that we have mentioned, like 5 cartoons. Need to correct it. Yeah, 5 cartoons on the ground floor and return with the home. So there are different ways that we can pass the arguments. Like we have seen when we were applying this, they were mentioning these values had to be x, first x, then y, then alpha. They see, can you see this? They have mentioned alpha at 0.3. So can we also do that? Can we type in the name of the parameters with the argument? Can we do that? Let's try to do it. Okay, let's see if we want to. Not able to see the output. You need to check your function if you have created the correct one or not. This is the function. Okay, now if I say the amount is equal to 5, and if I say the destination is equal to store, let's see, will it work or not? Yeah, it's working. Okay, let's see, let's try to tweak them a little bit. Can we do this thing that can we pass in the destination first and then we can pass the amount? Is it possible? Will my code run? Let's see. It runs. Okay, now let's do one thing. Let's say the amount is we are not mentioning about the amount. We are not telling it that it is the amount. Let's see if it works or not. No, it doesn't work. Okay, let's do something else. Let's see that we don't want to tell that if it is the amount or not. Let's see if our program identifies it to be amount or not. It does. Now let's see if it identified to be a store. I'll say this is the amount, but I'll not tell the program that it is the store. Positional argument keyword follow. Positional argument follows the keyword argument. See, we are getting the error. Can somebody help me to correct this error? Can we correct this error? It's not able to understand that it is a store. If I go back and delete it, run it, it is working. Default argument is always from left to right. Yes, that's for sure, but if I'm mentioning the amount, then why it is not working? If I'm telling that this is the amount, can somebody answer this question for me? It's not working. Then I have to tell about this also. In order to run this program, I have to tell about this. So why we are having this error when we do it? The second name is also defined with the name. No, okay. Valid question. Let me see then. Okay, so let's do one thing. Let's pass in the second name and we'll not pass in the first name. Okay, The first argument we will not pass. So now it's working. But why, when we are passing the first parameter, we are not passing the second parameter? It's giving us the error. What is the reason? Only string variable as an argument. Okay. Can I see some more answers? I'm not able to see. Sir, it's the rule for default argument. So what is the rule that we can only pass the name of the first argument, we cannot pass the name of the second argument? Is that so? Is this the rule? Okay. Thank you, Neetu ma'am. Thank you so much. So what I'm trying to tell you guys is, what I'm trying to explain here with this thing is how the code was working in this case. Ma'am, you said that we have to mention, we can only pass in the name for the first one and we cannot pass the second one. Then why it is accepting this third argument?
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
So once we starting defining the variable name, say alpha is equal to 0.3, then after all the arguments, we have to define the name of the variable. If we are starting with the y is equal to 6, then we have to define also alpha is equal to 0.3. It is
But
always
ma'am,
running from left to right. सर अगर आपने लेफ्ट से स्टार्ट किया है तो लेफ्ट के
right.
बाद जितना आर्ग्यूमेंट है उन सब का नेम आप डिफाइन करेंगे.
Okay.
Not
Okay.
getting?
But ma'am, this what my question is to you is that in this case we are not mentioning it to be like
We are not
in this
defining
case.
x and y.
Right.
Perfectly okay. We are defining the alpha. After
Right.
alpha, there is no argument in
Okay.
this case.
Right.
If we are defining x value, x is equal to 3, then we have to define the value of y. Y is equal to this, alpha is equal to this.
Okay. So that means from the point from where we start defining the values, we have to define all the
After
values.
that, all the variable must be defined. Yes, yes. It's a rule, left to right.
Okay, so that's what you're saying, right? So now let's come back to the example again. Now let's say if I'm defining this amount.
Amount
right?
is equal to 5.
Right.
Then we have to restrict it. We have to define what is the value stored. Destination is equal to store 1. Otherwise, there is an error.
Otherwise, I'm going to get an error. I see.
Yes.
So I guess it's clear to everyone. This is what I want to hear from you. I guess somebody help me with that. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure, sir.
Okay. So with this note, what we'll do, we'll take a break for next 10 minutes. And before that, if anybody have any questions, you can ask.
Not question, but again, I'll just chip in. It is so good to see interactive sessions.
Thank
And
you,
with madam also. So it is nice. It means it is vibrant. And it is truly data science interactive online class. Yes. Session. It should not be a class. Okay. So 10 minutes break.
Right, sir.
Fine it is. Okay.
Okay, everybody, you can take a break. You can have your glass of water or a coffee, whatever you like. Hello everyone. So I guess everybody is back now. Please type yes so that we can continue the session. Yes. Okay. Okay, great. So Mr. Pant has asked this question that is it necessary to use only string argument? Can we use, I mean, he's trying to say that can we use only string as an argument? So can somebody help Mr. Pant to answer this question, or should I help him? Can somebody answer this question of Mr. Pant? That is it necessary to use string, only string? Have somebody tried doing that? Mr. Pant, have you tried giving the number as to be your argument? Have you tried that? Okay, let's try. Let's try to do that. Let's say if I'm giving 1 as my argument and 2 as my second argument. I'm telling 1 the destination. Okay, just give me, yeah, destination is 2, right? So I'll say 2 up here and I'll say 1 up here. Let's see how it goes. Oh, we are getting the error. So Mr. Pant, it's not possible to start an argument or variable assignment in Python, start with number. If you are so much, if you really want to use them, what you can do, you can just put underscore in front of them. Let's try to do that if it works. So I'll try doing that. Let's see. Oh, it worked. So yes, this is what we can do. But then what happens is that, see, okay, let's rerun it then. See, it is taking as its argument 5, and yeah, it's working fine now. So what you can do, you can put underscore in front of it, or you can simply, if you want to use it only a number, but you can't really use a number directly if you really wanted to. So I guess that's answer your question. Please type yes or no if that answer your question. Then we can proceed further. I'm not able to see any responses. Mr. Pant, you there? I guess he's not in the session. Okay. So let's move on. Now we have solved this question, and now up till now what we have understood about function. What we have understood about function, that we could have a function with no input and no output. That was the function, first function which we created, get milk. And we could also have a function with input but no output. That was the case when we have money and we want to find out how many liters, right? We could also have a function in which we have an input as well as output. So that was the function we have just seen, right? So if anybody have any question in functions, so you can ask. So the reason why we are using function, because we want symmetry in our code, you can say, or we don't want any confusions in the code. We don't want stuff lying here and there. We want a clarity, or we don't want to use the same
type of the function.
Sorry,
Can we mention the real type of function?
your voice is breaking, sir. I cannot hear you. Can you type out your question?
Sir, I am asking you, can we mention the written type of function?
Return type. And what do you mean by that? Return type is? Like string, integer, that's what you're talking about?
I'm asking you, can we mention the return type of function?
What is the return type basically? You are saying, you are talking about the
So, as you have
string,
mentioned here, the
right?
argument. Now
Right,
it means we can pass the argument to function.
right.
But how we will return the value?
Sir, I have explained you that thing. How can we return a
Okay,
value by using the
okay,
return statement, sir?
Sir,
Yes.
so I think I get his question. He's asking that same thing कि C++ में जैसे we write na int, then the
Okay.
function name, and then within the
Okay.
parentheses we write the thing.
I see. Yeah, I know it's tough for someone, I say it always, it's tough for someone who is coming from a C background or Java background. So it's quite new for them. So that's why I'm putting so much, pressure on these points, because it's very important to remember. You might say this is very simple, why we are talking about this again and again, but this is very important to keep in mind, because you might mix up stuff that you have learned before and that you are learning, so you don't have to delete what you have learned before. You just have to relearn new things. That's how we learn new languages. You just have to relearn new things. What you have learned, that is also right. What we are learning with Python, that is also right. That is the relearning that we can say we are doing. So I guess that's answered the question. So it's clear now that it's clear to everyone, I guess, that why we are using function. We don't want to use the same code again and again. If we want to do some task, what we will do, we will create a function for that, and we will call that function in our program whenever we want to do the same task. We don't want to write the same code again and again. So that was the reason why we are creating function. Now, basically, a function will have different attributes, right? The attributes that we talked about, or the parameters that we'll have, or the functionality that they would have. Then we have already seen that. Now, let's look into object. What are object in Python? In case of Python, you might have learned something else in C, and you might think that what this guy is teaching. But this is only related to Python. Let's try to understand what an object is in Python. Now that we've understand, function, now we'll look into Python. So we do things with stuff. So pardon my formality. So we do things means, anything that we do in Python, any functionality that we want to carry on with Python. Maybe we want to draw some sort of bar chart, a pie chart. We want to add two numbers. So that things I'm talking about. By stuff, what I mean is object. So everything in Python is object. And that is the reason we have dynamic typing. That is the reason we are not concerned about what is going to be the input. We just care about the function. We just care about the argument or the object that we are trying to create. Let's understand that, in depth, basically what I mean by that. So let's say you have a car. Some of you might have a car, some of you might not have a car. I also don't have a car, but I have learned a lot of stuff about car that I can brag that I do have a car. So let's say that you have a car, and you give that car a name that is Lightning McQueen. So what exactly that means? So that car will have some sort of functionality, right? That will have some sort of engine power, that will have some sort of number of seats, that will have some amount of, the amount of fuel it would have. So these are the different attributes of a car, that it has some engine power. Maybe your friend or somebody else have a different car, it might have a different engine power, it might have a different number of seats, it might have a different fuel capacity. So these are the attributes. So the object is basically a car, and these are the different attributes of that particular object. So how can we access the object, I mean the attribute of an object? Let's try to look at that. So accessing the attribute of an object, what we can do, we can just type in the name of the object and then type the name of the attribute that we want. So let's say our object, or in this case, is Lightning McQueen. If you want to access the color of a Lightning McQueen, what we will do, Lightning McQueen dot color. If you want to access the engine power, then what we can do, Lightning McQueen dot engine power. If you want to access the mileage, of a Lightning McQueen, we can say Lightning McQueen dot mileage. So that is what object is. Now let's see what different kind of objects that we have seen in Python in the previous lectures that we have conducted. Let's see, and what are the attributes that we have seen. So in this case, data frame is also an object. If I say plot PLT, this is an example that you might relate with the Lightning McQueen case. So PLT is a object that we have imported. The matplot from we have imported matplotlib.pyplot. So pyplot we are using. So pyplot is an object in the form of we are using as an alias PLT. So the PLT is an object, and dot figure is the attribute of the PLT object. So in the same way, the scatter is also the attribute of the object. In the same way, style is also the attribute. In the same way, show is also the attribute. Now that you are aware that what exactly an attribute is, so let's look into more. Let's see what exactly methods are. Now we have this another term. I talked about this earlier when you are snatching your ears about hearing about a lot of new vocabulary. So I know I can feel that, but that's okay. It's also very interesting when you learn new things, when you hear about new words. It's also very interesting. It's very inquisitive. So now we are talking about methods. So what is a method? Let's try to understand that. Okay. So basically the state of a car, the Lightning McQueen would have some sort of state, right? It would have some sort of state. So that is the attribute of that. Maybe it will have some sort of fuel consumption. When you are driving the car all alone, it will have a different fuel consumption. When you are driving a car with someone, it will have a different fuel consumption. So that is the state of a car, and we call that to be an attribute. Not getting. Okay, I'll try to. Don't worry. You will for sure. So basically, so the attribute could be the mileage, the amount of fuel. The attribute could be the mileage and the amount of fuel. The mileage would change with time. The mileage would change. When you are driving it all alone, it would be different. When you are driving with someone, it would be different because the speed would be different. The amount of fuel would change over time. So that is the attribute. But when we talk about method, so method is basically a behavior that the car would have that would never change. So in this case, we can say drive. The behavior of a car is drive. Can you increase the volume? I mean, from my side, it's that's right. Methods are constant basically. They never change. That's the behavior. Somebody have some behavior, it will never change. If somebody have a jolly nature or some jolly behavior, it will never change. It will be same all life, right? So that's what the behavior is for. So now let's talk about how can we get a method, right? We've talked about the attribute, how we can access the attribute of an object. Let's try to talk about how can we access the method of any object. So let's try to look at that. Now let's say we have an object and we want to access its method. So we will have the method name, then we will have this thing, open and close parentheses, or you can say round brackets. We could have two round brackets, the way we have in case of function. Now you might be able to relate it. When we are calling the function milk, we have to pass in these round brackets. But this milk function is not part of any object. But when I talk about method is a part of an object. Method is a part of a particular object. We are accessing a method of a particular object. So basically, in other term, in simple terms, what we can say, method is also a kind of function, but it is a function of a particular object. And that is why we gave it a different name, which is method. And when you go to any of the blogs or any articles that you might surf on the internet, so you might come across with this term, or people might use it interchangeably. We can, I mean, I would not differentiate doing that, but we can. But it's just to, you know, give you an idea what is the real definition, what exactly the method is. That's what I'm trying to do here. So let's try to see what exactly a method would be. So Lightning McQueen will have a drive that is going to be a method. Let's say you have a Lightning McQueen car which is able to speak, which does have some artificial intelligence functionality, which we see most of the time in movies or maybe in Discovery. So it has that functionality. It is never going to change. So that is the method also. Let's say Lightning McQueen, your car can win a race. You drive that very well, and it has all the things that you need if you want to win a race. So that is also a method of a Lightning McQueen. So let's see, have we seen method, have we used method before? Let's try to look at. So when I talk about pandas, so pandas, what is pandas basically? It's a module. But when I talk about, so it's a module, I call it to be module, but it's also an object. So when I said everything in Python is object, if I haven't, I'm saying it again, everything in Python is object. Pandas is an object, Matplotlib is an object, everything, that means everything in Python is object. If it has some functionality with that object, we call that to be method. I mean, what we call that to be method. That object will have some functionality, and that is called as its method. So pandas are object, and it has a functionality of reading CSV. So read underscore CSV is a method, and as we can see the proof, it does have the round brackets. Like I said, it will have round bracket, so it does have a round bracket. Let's see, also in case of data is also a kind of object. You can see that now it got the functionality. What is the functionality of this data? It has stored the values of clean revenue underscore CSV file. It has all the information. Now if we want to access that information, if you want to explore that information, we have to use some method. So that is the describe function. That is the, not function, we call it to be method. So as I said, I will not differentiate between function or method, but you should, you know, you should learn. You should be better than me, I guess. So when we talk about data frame, also it's a kind of object. Now in this case, when I say plt.style.use, so use is also a method that we have. It has an attribute, plt has an attribute style. We'll look into different styles that it has, but we can use which style we want to use. That will be a method, right? So we are using this style up here, 538 weight, right? That's the style we are using. So I guess this is clear to everyone. Now in Python, when we talk about, you know, numbers, text, or maybe a float or an integer or any object, they all are object. And if they have some functionality, we will call that functionality as to be their methods. Now that is what makes a Python dynamically typed, that it will be dynamically typed. Why we call that? Because we are not concerned about the object type. By object type, what I mean, is it going to be an integer? Is it going to be a string? We are not concerned about that. We concerned about the functionality of a particular object, what that function can do. We can tweak around with that. That is the grace that we have with Python. Now another exercise that I have for you. Let's see if you are able to do it. I'll help you if you need my help. So the exercise for you is that you have to open the life.py file that we have created yesterday. Now what happens is that let's imagine again, you are working for the Silicon Valley client and you are doing well in your job. You are able to impress your boss and you are getting good bonuses. And now it's the time of production. Now your client for which you are creating that particular calculator wants the end product. They want to start producing the calculator. Now the thing is that what you have to do for that, you want to add the functionality of square root in your life.py file. So for that, what you have to do, you have to import the math module, and you can use Google, how to use the square root method in Python. You have to create a function called square underscore root, and that takes one input and return the square root. And you can save that file in your Jupyter notebook and go back and restart and calculate the square root of 63.14. So you can start solving this. If somebody need my help, I'll definitely help you. So for the math module, what you can do, you can just type in Google as math module in Python. So the reason why I'm giving it to you, because I want you to guys to read the documentation. I want you to know that how can you read a documentation, because if you want to do anything in Python, you should be familiar with the documentation, with Python documentation and different library documentation, if you want to know some functionality. Because in Python, the ease that we have, we can do a lot of tasks just by calling up a function. We don't have to write a lot of for loops, if and else statement, while loop and all. We can call in the function, but for that we should be aware of the function. And how can we get aware of the function? We need, if we are able to read the documentation, if we are able to go through the documentation. So now I will give you 3 minutes to do this task. What you have to do, you have to go back, you have to open this file, life.py file, and you have to edit this file, and then you have to save it. Then this is also, before that, what we can do, I'll talk about this maybe later on. This is a sort of method that I have created here. So please type yes or no if you are able to do it. Otherwise, I'll help you do it. No. Somebody can do it? Please type yes. I gave you 2 minutes, 3 minutes. You can Google it out. Anyone else? So let's wait for Neetu ma'am. So Neetu ma'am, everybody is waiting for your answer. We have a lot of hopes from you. Great, Dr. Pankaj, great. The reason is not to get a right answer. The reason is at least you are trying, you are looking at the documentation. Someone else is also trying. Unable to due to my laptop. Okay, what happened to your laptop? So this is the documentation. I have shared this with you, right? Preeti is also trying. Great, Preeti. Kudos to you. So you have 1 more minute. So somebody is not able to find the square root function in the math module in the maths documentation. So here it is. Okay, Jadid gave me the answer. He said import maths and define a function square root maths dot square root. But Jadip, don't you think we need an argument to be passed in the square root? I mean, I really appreciate what you did, but it's empty. It's not showing me any argument. Okay, cool. So we'll take into account Jadip's code. Let's see, how can we do that? So, okay, you passed this as an argument. Great, great, Jadip, great. Okay, he did it. So now, Jadip, how can we use this functionality in our notebook? Did you save the notebook? I mean, guys, this is how we do it. I'll explain it to you. We have to import the math module. Okay, so what it will do, it will download that functionality. Now, this is the, what we call, this is the method of a math module, as I have shown you. Let me show it to you again if you not able to see that. So this is the function that we are talking about, maths.square root. So what this function will do, whatever the value of x we will pass, it will return us the square root of that value. So Jadip, now the next step is how can we use it? Live.square root not 9. Great, Jadip, but I asked you to take the square root of 63.14. Can you do that for me? I mean, what, you did it already, but let's see. Okay, so what we have to do is, in this case, Jadip did pass the underscore as the input, or we can pass input as anything. We can say something. We have to type in the same thing in here. Hang on a second. I'm sorry. Yeah, something we can say, or maybe we can just say x. Then we also have to say x up here. And after doing that, I must save this file. Then I will go back in my notebook and I will import this file, which is life.py. So let's see if I have imported it somewhere. I must have. Let's see. Okay, let's import it here. That's not a problem. Import live. Okay, I have it. Now I want to have the functionality, the function that I have created. The function name was square root. So I'll have that function. I'm sorry. Yeah. Square root, and I'll pass in any variable. Let's say the Jadip, the way Jadip did it, he passed in 9. So yes, we are able to do it. Let's say, let's solve the question 63.14. Let's solve it out. 63.14. Yes, we are getting the answer. Live.square root. Great, Neetu ma'am. So everybody clap for Jadip and Neetu ma'am. You did great. Both of you did great. So now I guess you are able to understand, or you are able to relate how these different functionality of different modules were working, how we were able to do these functionality or import these functionality into our Python code. I haven't, or we haven't written this code in somewhere here on this notebook. We haven't written this code how to do the square root, but we have written this code in a module that we have created. It's a maths module, and we are calling it up here, and we have the functionality. So this is the same way. Yes, Neetu ma'am, if you could post your answer to everyone. This is Jadip's request. Please address the request, ma'am. So this is how we do it in the way this is how scatter work. They must have created a function which is scatter, and they must have mentioned that it will take multiple argument, like on the x-axis what should be plotted, on the y-axis what should be plotted, what should be the alpha value, what should happen. And in the same way they must have created a function which is figure, and in which they have a attribute which is a figure size, and in which they mention the 10,6 or maybe any value, any random value. They must have this method also. So I guess now you are able to understand the code that we have. That's okay, ma'am, that's okay. So Neetu ma'am is a little busy, so she won't be able to do that, but she can definitely, she can do it. So now I guess you all are able to relate what exactly we did on the first day. So that was my motto for yesterday's session and today's session, that I'll try to explain you whatever best possible from my end, to explain you the code and different vocabulary that we have in Python, how we use different things in Python. So if you have any questions, you can ask. In the same way, I have created a different method, you can say. This is the code Marvin that I have created, and while I have created this, you can see this is for the string operation. How does a string operation work basically? So I have started this with single quote. Now if I want to use single quote again, it will eliminate. Let's say let's remove this one. So it will not count any other, it will it will terminate the string on this point. But if we don't want to terminate a string, if we want to use these values in between, single quote in between, what you can do, you can use the forward slash, right? In the over here I can also use a forward slash, I can use forward slash. So now if I save this file, and if I go back in my notebook, and if I try to import code Marvin, I will get the output up here. So if I'll say I have imported somewhere here, I've imported life, right? So let's say I imported life dot quote Marvin, quote Marvin. So this is another kind of method which doesn't take any input, but we will get the output. So I haven't written this code on this notebook, right? I've written this code on this life.py file, but I'm able to have that functionality in my notebook just by importing that file. This is how these different functionality that we have, we are able to perform it without even coding them, without even coding how to get an intercept, without even coding how to get a coefficient, without even coding how this actually a linear regression model work. So we should clap for those guys who have written pandas, who have written scikit-learn, who have written numpy. We should clap for them because they did a really great job. They made our life easier. The way we don't have to write these codes again and again. Simply what we can do, we can just import the data. I mean, we can just simply import the module, and we can have that functionality in our notebook, in our code. So isn't that amazing? So somebody's saying, due to the bad network, I'm not able to connect. I just want to know how to import py file to Jupyter Notebook from the desktop workspace. So basically, sir, first of all, you have to import that file into your working directory the same way I did it. Where you have your notebook, I have my notebook on this location. So you need to upload that particular file. Just go on upload and select that particular file and have that in the same working directory. Once you have that file in the same working directory, what you can do, you can just simply import that file the way we did it. Import file, import live, or you can just give the name of the file, and then you can use dot to have different functionality, to call the different functionality from that particular file. So somebody's saying, so the methods are always created in separate file, and that file is imported whenever we want to use it. Yes, I mean, when the method that I'm talking about here are the method which are related to the object. when we talk about object oriented programming, you can create your own object, you can create your own methods. That is also the case. But what I'm talking about here, I'm just trying to explain you the method that we have used so far. That is how they work. That's what the point was, to explain you how these methods are actually working. They must have written somewhere, and we are just importing them to have that functionality in our code. So I guess that answers your question, ma'am, Vinita ma'am. That's answer to your question. My voice is not coming. Is this a problem with anyone else, that you are not able to hear me? When we are creating a notepad, saving it, showing a file name. Okay, let me create a notepad again. If I go to notepad and if I define, let's say I define a function sum, and I pass in two variable a comma b, then I use this, then I have to use tab, then maybe I'm saying return. This is not exactly right, but let's say for your understanding. Okay, so now I have created a function. Now if I go to file, you have to go to file, then save as, then you have to type the name of the file. Let's say I give it sum. Now save as, you have to go to the setting, save as data type, you have to go there, and you have it must be selected as text document.txt. So you have to change that to all files, then you can save this file with .py notation. Notepad and saving it, and it is showing the file name txt. Yes. I know this must be the case. That's why I've explained you this thing. This is what you have to do. You have to select all files, not text document. You have to select all files, and then you can give the name to the file and then .py notation. So Dr. Suresh, does that answers your question? Try doing that. Yeah, it'll work. Okay, great. So if anybody have any question so far what we have discussed in the things, otherwise we'll move forward. If anybody have any question, please ask. There is no sir, there is no import button. You have to type it. You have to type import live. You have to type as the way we written up here, import live. So import is again a function or an object, you can call it, the way we can import a file in a notebook. You can just say import, then the name of the file, then shift plus enter, the way I did it. Let me share. This is what you have to type in the Jupyter notebook. Now I guess this answers to all your questions, that how the things were working with linear regression when we apply our simple linear regression, how different things were working. Okay, now let's move forward. Okay, now what we are going to do today, we are going to do the regression analysis. Now for that, what we have is we have a data set, the LSD data set that we have. This data set is collected in 1968, and this data set was collected on the research based on finding the correlation of performance of test score with the tissue concentration of, so this is a sort of drug. So let me give you an idea what exactly this experiment was. What they did, basically they selected 5 people. They selected 5 people voluntarily. They enroll themselves to go for the maths tests. That's very amazing. And what happened is that they gave them some drug. They gave them some drug, and then they asked them to write or to solve some questions. And then they collected this data and try to analyze that data, that what exactly that data is trying to say, what is the effect of the drug on the performance of a test basically. So they have 5 volunteer people who were working on the test. They gave them some maths problem to work on, so they worked on this. So the scholars who were working on this test was this was the name of the test. You can Google it up. That's, and I'm sorry if I'm not able to pronounce it correctly. It's lygeric acid diethylamide, and this was the name, I guess. And this is the drug that they used, and the researchers' name were G. Bangler and George K. Afghan, MD. So Oscar H.L. Bing, MD. So these were the people who conducted this research. So I guess this is clear to you. Now, how they injected the drug to them based upon their weight. If somebody have a higher weight, they will inject the drug to them based upon their weight, so that everybody can have the same concentration of the blood. So what they did, they analyzed the tissue concentration of the blood, in the blood of a drug, how much concentration they have in of a drug in their tissue. So they asked them to write a test for 3 or 5 minutes, and then they analyzed that data. They collected the data and they analyzed the data. So I have that file with me, and I have already shared this file with you, I guess. This was the file, the LSD math score that we have. Let's try to look at this file, and let's try to understand how this file is found, and let's try to have the history of this file. Then we'll apply our linear regression on this file. Okay, it's taking too much time. Hang on. Let me restart the kernel. So what happens sometimes if your code gets stuck, what you can do, you can just restart the kernel, or you can interrupt the kernel. I'll try to run it again. Okay. Now let's look at the data that we have. Now this is the data that we have. Now the time delay in minutes, basically what does this specify is that they ask them to write a test after injecting the drug. They ask them to write a test after 5 minutes, then after 15 minutes, then after 30 minutes, then after 1 hour, then after 2 hours, then after 4 hours, then after 8 hours. So this was the time data. That's what the time data is all about. What is the LSD ppm? So this is basically the drug concentration in parts per million in their tissue, that how much concentration they have. So when starting at the 5 minutes, they must have a lower concentration. Then with the passage of time, the concentration keep on increasing. Then they have the average math score. So how they calculated the score is that they took the average, whatever the question they have attempted and how many of them they have corrected. Based upon they converted that to be into the percentage, then they took the average, and we have the data in this form. So let's understand how the marks must have been calculated. Let's try to look at that. So first, let's assume that there were 10 questions that they have for the test, and the correct answer by all of them might maybe maybe 9. So corrected by the volunteer, the control was maybe 9, and the volunteer corrected to be 3 questions. So what is the average score? That must be 33%. So that's what we have in the last column, or not in the 5th column, I would say 32.92%. So whenever we are dealing with any data, whenever we are trying to do whenever we're trying to apply any algorithm, any manipulation we are trying to do with data, it's very important to understand the data, what that data is all about. And that's what I try to give it to you, the description of the data, what are the different columns are for, what are they referring to. So I guess this is clear to everyone now. Please type yes or no if it is not, if you have any question related to data. Otherwise, we'll move forward. Great. Now, what we will do, basically, we will create 3 data frames out of this single data frame. And we have learned it yesterday also, that how can we create data frames, multiple data frames out of a single data frame. And that's what we are doing here. Now, what happened? We have stored the time into the time data frame, which is data, then double square brackets, we are using double square bracket, then the column name, we have that, then we are using LSD data, that is the name of the object where we have all the data, then double square bracket, the name of the column. In the same way we have score. If we want to look at it separately, you can also do that. Let's try to look at that. Volt time 0. Okay. No. Okay, just give me a second. I haven't run this column. Yeah, I haven't run this column. That's why I was not able to see that. If I run it, I'll able to see that. If I want to check the describe that we did at the first place, when we were dealing with the first linear model, that's what you should do. It will tell you about the spread of the data. So if you want to do that, describe, it will describe your data. It will give you the values. Now it has a count. It has 7 values. So if somebody have this question in your mind that there were 5 students, why do we have 7 values? Does anybody have this question in their mind? That there were 5 people who went for the test, then why do we have 7 values? Does anybody have this question? Hello? No, sir. No. Okay. So Vinita ma'am is saying why. Okay. So ma'am, the thing is that this is the average score that we have, and the values are collected based on the time. This is the average they got when the concentration was 1.17 and when the time was 5 minutes. They gave them the drug, they gave them 5 minutes, and they asked them to write for the test. Then after 15 minutes, they did the same thing. They injected them with the drug, they waited for 15 minutes, then they asked them to write the test. This was the test score. Great. So I guess we all are on the same page. Now let's try to look at the time. So this is the mean, this is the standard deviation, this is the minimum, maximum value. This doesn't really matter to us, but it's just for your understanding. Now let's look at LSD. Okay, this is the LSD count 7. This is the mean value, standard deviation. Again, it doesn't really matter. Let's look at it. This was the score, this was the average score, this was the minimum score, the mean was around 50, the standard deviation was 18, the minimum value was 29, and this was 75% value light at this point, and all that stuff. Now what we want to do, we want to visualize our data, right? So we will do it line by line so that you can understand what we are doing, right? That's very important for us to understand. Now what we will do, first of all, we will plot the graph. To plot the graph, we will use this command. We'll plot the graph on the time and the amount of drug in the tissue. Okay, simply we're gonna do that. We'll say plt.plot, and then what we will do, we will type time, and we'll say LSD, right? And if I run it, will I get any graph? If I run this cell, will I get any graph? Can somebody help me? Yes, I will get a graph. Somebody saying yes, I will get a graph. Okay. Let's try to look at that within. No, I should not get a graph. Okay. Jadip is saying no. Okay, let's see. Let's answer Vinita ma'am question. PLT is not defined. I need to run the, first of all, I need to import the Matplotlib. I haven't imported those libraries. So I'll have to import the Matplotlib first of all. Let's go back and let's import Matplotlib, Pandas data frame, all that stuff that we need. Because we will be using Matplotlib also, we will be using linear regression also. So let's go back, let's import that first of all. So Okay, it's importing it. Just wait for some time. It's taking too much time. Yeah, so we have imported it. Now, somebody was saying that I will get the graph. Let's see if I will just plot it. So yes, I get the graph, right? I do get the graph. So if I'll write, let's see if I'll say plt.show, what does the difference it makes? Does it makes any difference or not? It doesn't really makes a difference. Or does it makes a difference? Can somebody answer this question? If I'll just comment it out and if I'll just say plt.plot, I'm able to look at the graph. And if I just uncomment it, still notice the difference. If there any difference, there will be a difference. Okay, so that is what I'm asking. That is there any difference? Are you able to notice any difference? The figure, okay, how is it different? Let's see. This was the first. This was let's see. This is without the plt.show and this is with show. Okay, let's. So we have 1 to 6, we have 0 to 500 points here, and we have this line, right? Everybody, I guess, notice it already. Let's see the difference. Is there any difference? So how can somebody point out the difference to me? That if there is a difference, y-axis. Okay, how the y-axis is different? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 values, and if I remove it, let's see. I mean, you can unmute yourself and you can answer this question if somebody would like to. If you're not able to type it
सर
out.
शायद विदाउट कमेंट्स में 0 से स्टार्ट हो रहा था y एक्सिस की लेबलिंग
Okay, without comment,
और
you are saying.
जब कमेंट्स में डाल दिया तब 0 से
Okay, देखते हैं फिर आप कैसे कह रहे हो? इस पॉइंट पे कह रहे हो आप कि यहाँ से 0 से स्टार्ट हो रहा है, but this is x axis ना?
हाँ, that is the x axis. For the y axis I'm telling.
Okay, let's see. Let's put the plot. Okay, but what is the difference? I'm not able to find any difference.
नहीं, हाँ, that is not the difference.
Can somebody else please help me with the difference? Is there really a difference? Okay, let's look it again. Maybe you're not able to notice it. Let's look at this again.
We are getting that Matplotlib line written.
That's very obvious. That's very noticeable. What about the? Do we notice any difference in the graph? Is there any difference in the graph? Neetu ma'am, can you help us? So please check the line 20 you use to show function. Line 20. Which line 20 you're talking about, ma'am? Comment all show function in the whole file, but I don't have any. I mean, these functions are not running. You're talking about these. Which one? You're talking about them? They're not
Sir,
running. I haven't. No, ma'am. I
please
haven't.
comment this.
These one.
But
These one. You're talking. You are talking about this one.
yes, sir. Please comment the
But ma'am.
show function.
Okay. I have commented.
Now run it.
Yeah. Okay. Let's uncomment.
Without.
Yeah.
How is it possible? How without show function the graph is displayed? According to me, without using show function, graph is not displayed.
According to you, without show function, the graph is not displayed, right?
Yes.
Sir,
But ma'am, yes.
So the size of the graph is changing. Without
Size of the
Excuse me,
show,
sir.
it is of a smaller size.
okay.
Excuse me,
Let's
sir.
see.
I want to say something out here. Sir,
Sure, sure.
using the method, the point where we are having, uniform increase. मतलब जो
Okay.
straight line start हो रही है वो 100 पे start हो रही है using the show
Okay.
method, and before using the show method it is starting after the 100, after crossing the
Okay.
100 point.
Okay. Yeah, it is one of the difference. Yes, it is one of the difference. Right. Is there any?
Haan,
Is there any other
because
difference?
the size of the graph itself now.
Size of the graph also increases. Okay. Let's see. So is anyone else plotted this difference that Prabjot pointed us? Change in the size of the graph. Yeah, Jadip also pointed the same stuff. Neetu ma'am, did you notice anything else?
So as per me, without show function, it won't be displayed. I don't know why it is displayed. Is it possible you
Okay.
restart the kernel?
Yeah, sure, ma'am, sure. Then I have
Neetu
to
ma'am,
run all the
here it is getting displayed because it's the Jupyter notebook na, so each cell ke baad it gets the output gets displayed in
great,
some
great, Viduti. Great. That's amazing. That's the right answer that I was looking for basically. Because we are using in the Jupyter notebook, so graph will get displayed because
Yeah.
that's what the Jupyter notebook is for. Okay,
Yes.
let's
This is
let's
the
run it.
reason.
So let's run it again and let's see. Okay, if there do we able to spot any difference? Let's run it. Let's store them. Okay, let's run it now. Okay, but ma'am, see, the same thing is happening, I guess.
Hmm. Right. Maybe so Jupyter, as per Jupyter, it will run. In the Spider, it won't be.
Yes, ma'am. That's why we are not talking about spider right now. But
Mm-hmm.
the difference is basically if you will not even use the plot.show function, still you will be able to. You can mute yourself now.
I will
If
try,
anybody,
sir.
if anybody else wants to comment anything, show method will display the existing graph. Plot method is plotting. Baldev Singh is saying show method will display the existing graph. Plot method is plotting. I did not understand what did you said. Show method will display the existing graph. Which existing graph you're talking about? And plot method is plotting. So that means he's what I understood what he's trying to say. He's saying that without without show, it will show us some existing graph that it would have in the memory. And if we use a show, then it will show us the graph of the data. But let's see.
हाँ मतलब he's saying if we comment out the plot wala line then
Right.
it wouldn't actually show any graph.
Okay. He's saying if I comment the plot dot show, then it will not show the line. But I am commenting it out, right?
No. The above line plt dot plot time and LSD we have given it as the
That's
argument.
very obvious. That's very obvious because this is the command that we have to use to show the graph. But what I'm talking about is there any difference? Are you able to spot any difference?
That
Okay,
was
so let me try to answer this question. I guess everybody and most of you have tried to answer this question, and I claps for you. I mean, you did very well. And in fact, the difference in the Jupyter notebook, what happens is that even if you are not using the plt.show, still you'll be able to see the graph. But what happens is that we have this habit of writing plt.show. There's a minute difference that we will be able to notice, but there's not a big difference, I would say. If you use it in some other IDs, you won't be able to see the graph. But in Jupyter notebook without plt.show, you will be seeing the graph. Can you use the can you use them one by one? Yeah, that's not a problem. I mean, I can delete it. Okay, so let's do one thing. Is everybody is so confused? Let's do one thing. Let's have it here and let's have it here. Now let's see if we are able to spot any difference. So we can see, is there any difference that you guys are able to see? Okay, let me see. One by one. See, I'm doing it one by one. On the one window, on the one cell, I have the graph without the plt.show. Oh, I'm sorry. plt.show. Yeah. So is there really a difference? So somebody is saying that the line will start from some other point. So let's try to check it. So the line is starting at this point on this graph, right? It's going somewhere to this point, right? Let's go to the above graph. That is the difference. That is not the difference. I mean, it's starting from both the points. So I guess this answer to your question, or this triggers more questions in your mind. But that is the, that is what I would say for now, that in Jupyter Notebook, that yes, we will be able to see the graph without even using the show function. And I guess somebody said this at the first place, that yes, we'll be able to see the graph. Vinita ma'am said it. Dr. Vinita said it. Yes, we'll be able to see the graph. Vinita ma'am, would you like to add something to this? That why we are able to see the graph without even using the show, plt.show function? Would you like to add something to it if I missed on something? Hello? Vinita ma'am, are you there? Are you with us? Okay, she's saying something. Okay, you are also learning. Great, great. But that's a good observation. Or was that an observation, or was that a I just tried? Okay, so that was a tukka, I would say. Okay, that's great. Okay, so now let's go back. Let's see what are the different methods that we have in the matplotlib.pyplot API. When we go there, is there any difference that we have? I mean, different methods. What are the different methods? Let's try to look at them. So this is the documentation for plt.plot. This is basically the types of graphs. I would say these are the types of graphs, I guess. Let me go back to the top and see what is it for. So it talks about the plt.plot, that what are the different functionality, what are the different methods that we have in plt.show. So I would recommend you all, I will encourage you all to go to matplotlib.org API and read about them, that what can you understand from them. If you want to add any functionality in your graph, then you can just refer to this documentation and you will be able to add that functionality. So if I if I search for plot, because we were doing plt.plot, let's see what else we can find about the plot. So can you see there is a command that we have, which is color. So how can we use color? I mean, is it even possible to use color in our graph? So they say there is a command color that we can use, and let's see if they talks more about it. They said somewhere here, there's nothing. Okay, not subplot. Not this one, not this one. Okay, no, not this one. Okay, it would have somewhere here. So these are the different parameters that they have mentioned here. What does this means? What does this means and all? So yes, we have this parameter which is called color. So we can use different color in our line, the line that we have here. Let's try to do it. Okay, let's try to type it, the color to be equal to, let's say, yeah, let's say the color to be, it's already blue, let's say the color to be G, that's green. Let's say, do we get any difference? Yes, we are able to see the difference. If we want any other color, let's say C, yes, magenta, you can have black, white, or any line. So in this way you will find different functionality, different methods, different arguments that you can pass in your plt.plot, and you will have difference, you know, in the line. Also there is another parameter that is called line width. Let's see what does this makes any difference. Obviously it should make some difference. Let's see what does that difference is. So it has increased the length of the line. If I will keep it 10, you will notice the difference. So you can see we don't want it to be 10, right? We don't want it to be 10. We can have it maybe like, maybe let's see for 1, what does it? No, we don't want it to be 1. Let's keep it as 2.5. Let's see the difference. I mean 2.5 would be good. And if somebody is from the, if somebody want to tweak with the graphics, so I have a little graphical code for you. So if I want to tweak with colors, if I want my own colors, so for that what I can do, I can go for the hex code. Some of you might be aware of the hex code. You can go for the hex code. So this is a website that you can go for, that is flatuicolors.com. So you can select any color. So let's say I selected this one. If I go back to my notebook, so I can just type this hex code and you will notice the difference. So see, this is the difference that you get. You can also have this color. And let's try to go back to the site. Let's see. Also, there is another site for the colors. If you wanted to tweak about the colors, if you only want single color, you can have single color. If you want multiple colors, you can have multiple colors also. So let's say I want this color, so I can have this colors also, right? This is copied. Let's go back. Let's change it. And the reason why I'm talking about color, because we want to show our graph, you know, it should be more in a good style, you know, it should be more interactive, that people will see it and say, wow, what an amazing graph you've plotted. Because we always want to impress someone, maybe to a boss, maybe to a customer. So we want to have a different kind of, you know, colors in our graph. So we can do that with the help of these two websites. I will share the link for this one as well. You can go and look into it as well and tweak around with the code. And I would really encourage you to go to the Matplotlib site and look into these different parameters and try to tweak around with them. Try to create this sort of graph. That how can you do that? I mean, not today, maybe it will take some time, but at least you can start trying it out. Now, let's say that now this graph is not able to explain much because it doesn't have any title, it doesn't have any label for the x-axis, it doesn't have any label for the y-axis. So let's try to put the label up here. Okay. So what we are going to do, we are just going to type in the title name. So let's say, I'm not going to type it again because we don't have much time now left with us. So I'll copy this from the code that I have. So let's say, let's look at this code without the font size. Okay, let's ignore the font size for now. I mean, I'm sorry for that. Yeah. So you can have it here. We can have it here, and okay, let's try to run it. So yes, you can see that now we know what we have on the x-axis. We have time in minutes, we have a tissue LSD ppm on the y-axis. If you want to change the size, we can also do that by using the font size. So the way we did with our function, we had different arguments to be passed to that function, different parameters, I would say, to be passed to that function. We passed those parameters, then we had the different changes in the output. The same way this works. I guess you all are able to follow. Great. Now you can see if I have the size, if I make it like 14, I want the size to be, highlighted so that, it can catch the attention. If somebody is looking at this graph, it will catch their eyes attention. Also, I can add more functionality to it. There is another thing which is called plt.text. If you go up here, you will find it. Let's say plt.text. Hang on. plt dot, or it was there. Okay, so let's look at what does this command do. I found it from the website only. I haven't created them on my own. I'm not that genius, so I have found them from the website only. So let's see, what does this do? So if you want to learn something, if you want to see what exactly that functionality do, you should just try it on your own. I guess we all are aware, but I'm just putting this point. So let's see if we want to check what if I put the value of x to be, let's put the value of x to be, let's say to be maybe 5, let's say, and let's say I put the value of y to be, maybe I'll put it like make it 5, so that we can notice the difference. And then what we'll do, we'll say there is another parameter which is called s. So let's say s is, we are putting this is the name of the scientist and the year for the research. I put it this way, and let's try to run it. Let's see the difference now. What difference? Oh, so are you able to notice the difference? It has this text on now we are able to see the text on our graph. Now if I change this value to be 1 and it's y, see, we are able to notice that. If I make it like maybe 10, it will shoot the graph. If I make it like maybe -10, and it will again shoot the graph. It's going there. Now we want it to be somewhere near to this point. So what we will do is we will make it x as 0 and we'll make y as to be minus 0.5. Correct? Somewhere here on this point we can have it. Or yeah, this somewhere this point we can have it. Or maybe if you want it more closer, then you can say maybe 0.2. We'll have it more closer. So I'll just keep it as 5. Now if I again want to change the the text size, I want to change the size of a text, so I can have the same parameter, that's font size. So see how easy it is in Python to understand what is any function doing. You can just understand just by the name. You just look at the name and you'll be able to understand, yeah, the font size must be changing the font size. So that is the advantage that we have with Python, that we don't have to remember all the functions, and we can always look at the function and we'll understand what this function is doing. Text alignment. Yes, there must be a way to do that. I haven't explored it. You can, I mean, you can for sure, you can explore that text alignment you're talking about, right? There must be. I haven't explored it, to be very honest, because it was never required. But you can for sure, you can explore that can we explore about the alignment of a text. So also what I want to do is what I want to do is I want to change these values because there is a lot of difference in this. In the last graph that we have, we want to change these values. We want to reduce this difference. We want a graph to be starting at this point only, from where we want our these lines, these axes at this point. So what can we do for that? We can mark the limits of our graph, because now it has some values and we are not sure till what point it can go. So we'll mark those values. So for that, what we can do is we can just say the limits, the x limit and the y limit. We'll have them. So on the y-axis we have 1 to 7, and on this point we have 1 to 500 maybe. So we'll mark those limits and we'll have them in the graph. So that's what we have it here. Now the graph is starting at this point. If somebody want to raise the value maybe close to 0.5 exactly, so they can also do that. So now the graph is going to start from this point, but I'll not do it. I'll keep it here. Right, so you can tweak with these options and see what difference does it make. And let's see, we want to increase the size of these the things which are written on the x-axis and the y-axis. Let's try to increase the size or decrease the size. So we can do that with the help of plt.xtext. So I have the size 14, because why I'm using 14, because I've given the size to this LSD concentration, to the title. That's why I'm using the size. So now you'll notice that the size, this size, this size, this size, all the text size is same. Value for is there a minimum and maximum value we are giving max for x and y? Yes, you can say that this is the max, from where the graph is starting, obviously from the minimum point and the maximum point that it can go. That's obvious. Also what else is left? Also, yeah, so there are different styles that we have in the graph. So you can also go for you can just Google it up on Google, Matplotlib graph styles. You can have a different customization sheets. So we have this style also. We can have this style in a graph. We can have this style in a graph. That's different, but obviously you can tweak around with that. So what I chose, I use a classic style. It's a classic style. You can have a black grid or something. So this is the classic style that we have. Maybe you can have a black grid, or you can tweak around with that. So that's how we can plot our graph. Now what we want to do, we want to apply the linear regression algorithm on our data points that we have. So for that, what we have to do, we have to create the object as rigor. That's an object in which we have stored the functionality of linear regression, and we want to fit the LSD, the concentration of LSD and the score, the number of score, the how much the person scored based upon the amount of LSD that they have. And then we print the theta one with the help of regor.coefficient 00 value. Then we print the intercept value. We print the R square. So let's run it. Let's run this code and let's see what are the different values that we have. So the theta one that we are getting is minus 0.09. The intercept that we are getting is 89.12, and the R square is 87.83. So what does this mean? That means the R square means that our model is able to identify 87% of the value. But if I talk about the last time, what we did is we were getting the R as somewhere close to 52%, I guess, somewhere close to 52. So this code is not actually done, so you can look at that as well. So in this case, we are getting the percentage close to 87%. So that is an amazing number that we have. Now if we want to plot the line, if you want to plot the line of the line that we had, also one more thing that's left, that's matplotlib inline. So what does this do? Basically, what does this line of code does in your code? When you add it here and run it, it doesn't really makes a difference. But what it does basically, when you will download this notebook, when you go and go to your file and go to the download as IPv file, this is the file that we wanted, notebook, then you will have that graph downloaded with that notebook. That's what this function does, and you will see this a lot. You will see this function a lot when you go anywhere, on the blog, on the research paper. You might see it a lot, because on that research paper you will be able to see the graph. So with the help of this Matplotlib inline, you can have your graph in your notebook to be stored. Okay, so now what we are trying to do here, we are going to what we are going to do is, this was the challenge, but it's the end of the session, so I don't want to give it to you. The challenge was basically add a title, arithmetic versus LSD, and we want to add the label on the x-axis, the tissue ppm. We want to x the y-axis with performance score. And what we are doing in this case, we are plotting the predicted value that we have. So let's do that. So this is what we get. This is what the predictions are basically. If we have on this point, we have the LSD ppm, and this is the score. So if the LSD ppm is really high, the score is going to go down. If we have the LSD ppm to be very low, the score is very high. So that's what we have understood, and this is our prediction, and this is the real value. This is our prediction, this is the real value, the actual values. So this close we are to the actual value, this close. So you can see, so that's why we have 87% accuracy. I was asking about the question to so many people that Matplotlib inline. Yes, I guess, I also had this question when I see this thing at the first time, and I was also very confused about it. But why do we have this thing? And I also asked this question to many people, but I didn't get the right answer. But I guess you are lucky that you got the right answer. But still, you can make sure that whether it's the right answer or not, you can Google it up and make sure that it's the right answer. So that's it for the today's session. And if you have any question, you can ask. If anybody have any question, you can ask. So can you please get data file, other relevant links, video of the last day session, so we can revise and practice? Sure. I have shared the file with the team. You might get an email by the end of today, I guess. Difference between figure, graph, and Python. I mean, not exactly. These are different vocabulary terms that you have in English, but literally not. That doesn't make a difference in Python. I mean, yeah, there is actually a difference that if we look into it, in a broad perspective, we could have a graph, maybe a bar graph, or pie chart. We could have different figures, maybe, pie chart or something. There are different Boylan charts. There are different charts that we have. If you go to style, Matplotlib styles, then you will see different kinds of bar graph. If I Google it up for you, that Matplotlib styles. If I show you what sort of graph that we can draw, so you can see these are the different type of graphs that we can draw with Matplotlib. So these are the different graphs that we have. This is also a type of graph that we have. So these are also some values. If we get a time, we'll look into them. But you can always explore. You have Google with you. You have the power of Google. You can always explore things. But have some tech issue, and also we are working from home, so can complete session. Okay, that's all right. I mean, you can install Anaconda, and once you get the notebooks from my end, you can practice them. Somebody's saying, can we draw flowcharts in Python? Yeah, you have to look for the code. I mean, I'm not sure. Flowcharts in Python. Let's see. Do we have that? I mean, you have to look for the code. It's not required. I haven't worked on them. It's not never required to me, but there would be definitely a way that we would have this option. I guess this is the case when we talk about, you know, in case of decision tree, we can draw them in that case, I guess. Can we draw flowchart in Python? Thank you. Since I have predicted disease using deep learning, I can process. Yes, you can. You can have your model. You can download the pickle file. Then if you have run your deep learning model, and you can save that model. So the next time when you want to predict something, you don't have to run the whole code again. You can also save the output. That's not an issue. So if anybody doesn't have any question, anyone else question, any other question? It will be not possible if I say so. Not possible. I mean, I can surely do that, but it's a time series data that we have, and there are many factors when I talk about times, you know, in case of COVID-19. So surely we can do that, but maybe we have to have another session for it to understand time series data. What does the time series data does? Image analysis through Sir, your voice is breaking. Why your voice? So there is a breakage in your voice. Sir, we did not understand a word that you said, sir. There was a lot of breakage in your voice and an echo. I think you need to disconnect your internet. Check your internet, sir. There might be some issue on your end. So image, somebody saying image analysis through Python. Yes, that can be done with the help of Keras API deep learning to deep learning. When we have Keras API for that, you need to first of all label your data, and then you can start applying the algorithm.
Is it audible now?
Yeah, it's better, way better, sir.
Oh, it's better. I think it's a Easter Sunday, so yes, and it's already end of day 3. But what I was saying is
Right.
that since we are talking about this time especially with the reference to this COVID-19. So what can happen is, because I don't know whether they have received all those feedback forms, issued by USARC and Brillica. So if they have received it, the participant, they can write down, they can just put forward their ideas, and subsequently they can build some project, on those time series data. That's very important.
Right,
So
sir. Right.
something could be built on that. Yes.
Right.
And
Right, sir.
then we have all these matplot libraries there. So all those things different for different participants, different ways, and different projects could be allocated, and they can be subsequently also issued certificates when they develop something, on those ideas. So
Right, sir. Right.
if you have, yes.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, it's I think end of day 3. If you
Right,
don't
sir.
have any more questions, so thank you very much.
Thank you so
And
much.
day 4 again we will start off. So tomorrow morning 11 again. And by
Right,
that
sir.
time, if they have those feedback forms with them, they can just jot down the ideas, and as to how this data science, this thing could be taken forward. Furthermore,
Right.
do we have anything? Are we also
Right.
covering deep learning?
So I'll try to do that on the last day. I'll try to do that.
On the last day, on the last day.
Right.
But yes, maybe deep learning, other things, we could take them separately. So
Right.
we can
Because deep
also
learning,
ask for the responses.
right, because deep learning is again an advanced topic, sir. You have a lot of things in deep learning,
Yes.
RNN, NNN, there's a lot of things in deep learning, LSTM,
No, this is
different
what
things,
this is. Yeah, this is what I'm saying. So therefore,
Right.
we would be needing, this feedback, and
Right.
how have they taken it, their
Right.
response to this entire program, as to how
Right.
we can take it forward. How can we also, in different groups, we can
Right.
have all these collaborated projects that we
Right.
wish to develop. So
Right.
we can
Right, sir.
have this feedback from the participant. That would be pretty handy. I don't know, but if they could just provide some insight, maybe one or two. The remaining participant, we have only 20 participants now. So if they
Right.
have anything to add, so maybe they are welcome with their suggestions.
Sure, sure, sure. Please, everywhere. If anybody wants to give any inputs, please go ahead. Feedback form, you haven't received it. I'll ask the team to share that with you.
Because that is must be required. We would be needing that, and I'm pretty happy because few participants, especially, they are so very keen, so very attentive, and so very responsive. I'm very happy. In fact, not only we can issue further, and we have a few projects, and they can be part of our projects also, especially government projects. So we can have something of consequence, maybe
Right, sir.
something meaningful based on
Right.
this program. Right.
Right.
So thank you very much, Nandesh.
Durgesh sir, very good afternoon. I am Dr. Ashulekha Gupta from IMS Unison University. I'm sure you remember me. We met. I have attended. Yes, we have attended. I have attended your so many lectures. Sir, first of all, thank you so much. Given this thing, this opportunity to attend this, and very nice program you had organized, and definitely as you had asked, deep learning, and definitely we would like to attend deep learning because I'm already working on ANN paper, artificial neural network. Definitely I would like to attend this deep learning, and whenever you are going to organize, and I would be attending. Yeah,
Oh,
thank you so
thank
much.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll appreciate, because this is the quality time. It's an opportunity time. Maybe we can explore better things, more meaningful and more insightful projects. Maybe we can envisage. So that's very important. And your response is so very crucial and critical for us. Right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Doctor. Any other response? Nandesh.
Yes, sir.
So here again, I you for the time you have given and for this wonderful interactive, not discourse, but very, very interactive session. Thank you very
Thank
much. Good day. Enjoy a nice time. Stay safe.
you.
Stay healthy. Enjoy yourself.
Sure.
Bye. Take care.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Have a good day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.